How about advice that you can give on Ramadan, because it's like in 2 weeks from now, which is basically intermittent fasting, but without water. You can't drink even water.
Sure. So that's a very good question. There's actually a lot of research on Ramadan and fasting because a lot of professional sports teams in Iran and other countries practice Ramadan, and there's been a lot of sports science research on it. It's a pretty well-studied subject. I will say that the most clever solution to the Ramadan dieting conundrum has ever been phrased is by a Muslim bodybuilder named, I think, Essa Obiad, and I believe he lives in Kuwait or something like that. Somebody asked him, like, when you have contest prep on Ramadan, what do you do? He's like, well, so the whole thing of Ramadan is like, you don't eat half of the 24-hour cycle. Like, you fast. You have to fast. And they're like, He's like, well, I do my fasting at night, so God and I are cool like that. So then during the day, I just eat my normal meals. And it was like, but isn't that like that all the time? He's like, yeah, but I've sort of made an understanding with God that I'm okay. And I was like, well, that's easily the best way to do it, right? So, not everyone that sort of has that option or has those religious beliefs. That's option number one, is to sort of say, I'm just going to live my normal bodybuilding lifestyle, and, Allah willing, everything will sort of, between me and God, everything will sort of work out. And sometimes that's a personal journey you can have and arrive at that conclusion. I think it's totally fine. Fundamentally, no one really tells you what your relationship with God is like. That's between you and God, right? And if you're okay with that, I think that's totally fine. The second option is to make sure that you're conserving the fundamentals of diet as much as possible in Ramadan. So, for example, during Ramadan, when nightfall occurs or before dawn, you make sure to have at least meet your calorie totals for the day and your protein totals for the day. Okay. What an interesting solution to this is you fast during the day. As soon as the fast is over, before you go to sleep, you have a really, really big meal, lots of protein, carbs, so on and so forth. You wake up in the middle of the night and have a casein protein shake or a whey protein shake, something that's not going to disturb your sleep, maybe some casein or whey pudding, right? Because it's not a lot of water and it doesn't really, make you get up and pee and stuff. And then in the morning, you wake up before sunrise or before the fasting period starts, and you eat a huge, huge meal of very slow digesting carbohydrates, lots of fiber, tons of protein, and plenty of fat to make sure that you're fasting during the fasting hours. But in a technical sense, at blood nutrient levels, you're not actually fasting, right? So that means that you're only really fasting for like 6 hours at the end of a fasting period. But because you no longer fast at night, because you're eating through the night, you wake up in the middle of, you eat before you go to sleep, you wake up to have protein in the middle of the night, and then you wake up for breakfast early. You're not fasting at night anymore. Then really the sort of the percent of a 24-hour day that you're fasting is really just kind of the same as usual. It just shifts from nighttime to daytime. Now, is that optimal? No, we're supposed to be fasting at night and not during the day, but it's not that bad. As long as you get your calories and protein, you're pretty good to go. And that breakfast before the fast should be very slow digesting, because it's a good time for casein, lots of high-fat meats, lots of lamb, right? It's a very high-protein Middle Eastern choice that also happens to be delicious. So that's a pretty good way to go. And then the hydration front, you have to make sure that the meal before you start fasting, pound the fluids. Keep your salt intake nice and high so it retains fluid for you. You have the first couple of hours of fasting, you had better be peeing your guts out. You have to be hyperhydrated so that by the time the fast is over, you're just a little bit dehydrated. And as soon as the fast is over, that first meal, you're taking tons and tons of fluids, right? And then maybe even in the middle of the night, that casein pudding could be a casein shake so that you get some fluids in, and maybe put some salt into it just so it stays in you more and doesn't just excrete out. And that way you can sort of engineer these outcomes. And just lastly, how long is Ramadan typically?
A month, 13.
A month.
Yeah.
So it's, for me, I would say for almost all Muslim bodybuilders and lifters, that is an excellent time in the year to program a resensitization or active rest phase, right? That is the time to do your lowest training volume. That is the time. So I would say for 2 weeks, first 2 weeks of Ramadan, you do like very low training volumes, maintenance volume training. And then for the last 2 weeks, You do active rest, which is basically the first week is super easy training, and the second week you train like twice and you just don't do anything else. Really let your body recover. Your joints and stuff will still recover, no worries, even if you're sleeping and eating weird. And after that time, when you go back to normal eating, you have 11 months of awesome hypertrophy training, so on and so forth. So a lot of the professional bodybuilders that are Muslim, they don't compete right after Ramadan. They compete right before Ramadan. They get 2 or 3 competitions in, and then for Ramadan, they just come off a lot of their sports supplements, really to relax. And, Ramadan is about a communion with God, right? So that's when it's their time to connect to their religion more than their time for bodybuilding. This is basic training, eating like I described. Once Ramadan is over, then you start to go back into normal training, normal eating. What the really bad idea is to say have a competition like a week after Ramadan and say, I'm going to train through this. It's a very, very bad idea. I would highly recommend against it.
Yeah. So what I understood, just go to your MEV, minimum effective volume. And
not even maintenance volume. Maintenance volume. MV. Yeah, very low. Yeah.
That's very, very low.
Very low. But remember, you're not going to be making a ton of gains when instead of sleeping through the night well, you have to eat and sleep at the same time. And you're not going to make great gains when you're fasting the entire day. And think about it this way. How does your workout window get affected if you either train and then you have to fast the rest of the day, or you fast an entire day, you're completely out of energy, and then you train and then you eat, right? That's awful. So it's not ideal for training. So training has to be the easiest possible just to conserve muscle. We don't want to try to grow any muscle during Ramadan.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think the problem is that people, the very common problem is that people don't have access to a 24 hours gym. So the gym closes before the sun goes down. So they can't hit their meal, hit their protein shake, and then go strong to the gym.
Yeah. Well, the easy solution to that is minimal or no training for a month. But as long as you get your protein and calories in, I actually don't think that's a big of a deal. A ton of bodybuilders take a month off of training every year. And people think, oh my God, a month, I'm going to lose everything. Bullshit. After a month of training, you're going to look soft, you're going to feel weak. And then a month of training after that, you're going to be back to your all-time best. And then you're going to be making huge gains because you're going to be completely recovered. You're going to be psychologically recovered, ready to go to the gym, so on and so forth. So if you don't, in fact, have 24-hour gym access, then, you'll have to take a month off of training. But, you can do some push-ups at home, and you can do some jump squats and some pull-ups just to keep yourself a little bit limber. I think that's totally fine.